We have 3 spots left to give. I'm going to pass it on over to Cedric and Monty.
Maria, Corey, thank you both very, very much. It is the best part of Saturday, day number 2 of the Pro Tour. We are going to send the final players into the top 8. Cedric Phillips, Monty Davuti, thank you all very much for joining us here for Pro Tour Final Fantasy. Monty, you and I have had the opportunity to watch this matchup a couple of times. Mono Red versus Is It Prowess, and it comes down to maybe just one key card.
Yeah, Mage Pain Lizard named the game. And, you know, we've already seen some people cutting 1. We saw Ken, I believe, Yukihiro, has 3 copies of the main deck. But for William, he only has 2 in the main deck.
Okay.
And that is sacrificing your odds of drawing one in game 1 significantly. So in a matchup like this, where you really do want to get that free game before your opponent gets more answers to it, the fact that you've sacrificed this much might be a problem, guys.
Well, we are going to find out here momentarily as we are underway in the first of what will likely be many matches to figure out who's going to be making the top 8 here of Pro Tour Final Fantasy. And we kick things off here from William with a Hired Claw.
And I do want to point out that William is no stranger to this position, because last Pro Tour, he was at this exact record, 11-3-1, in the last round, where he played for top 8 and lost and missed the top 8, fell into the top 16. So definitely some flashbacks of that, and hopefully he's shaken off the nerves, hopefully not letting any of that get to him.
Perhaps a shot at redemption here for William. Mono Red is the name of the game. You do see the hand here, Burst Lightning, Monstrous Rage, Screaming Nemesis among those red cards here for Toni. It's an island, and it looks like it might be Vivi, and it is. The very powerful legendary wizard has been very impactful this weekend in Las Vegas, and if Toni is able to untap with that on the battlefield, things can get out of hand very quickly, folks.
Yeah, taking a look at William's hand, there is no answer right now. Burst Lightning, of course, only dealing 2 damage, so won't be able to deal with Vivi right away. So I think the only play available to William is to just get aggressive and hope that he can just push as much damage as possible without giving Toni an opportunity to punish him with this Vivi.
And you see there with the Manifold Mouse targeting the Emberheart Challenger. There's the Valiant Trigger revealing a Monastery Split Spear. That's not a 3rd land, so all William can do, unfortunately, is pass the turn back.
Yeah, and I believe William is about to be in a lot of trouble, because Stock Up will start the turn, and then Torch the Tower can clear off the only really problematic permanent on this board, which is the Emberheart Challenger. Manifold Mouse not really representing that much just by itself. Of course, it's something that Toni does have to respect, considering with Double Strike, if there's a couple of monstrous rages that come out of the hand, that could be a problem. But as things stand, Toni, feels very firmly in the driver's seat.
Well, the stock up is done resolving, and Vivi has grown a little bit larger, and now Sleight of Hand will resolve, and Vivi will grow up even more. Monastery Swiftspear has 2 prowess triggers, so that's what the blue die is for, so we can keep track of that, both for the players in the future match area and for you at home, as now Sleight of Hand will resolve. And the options are between Sleight of Hand and Shivan Reef, so it looks like Shivan Reef is headed to the bottom, and Sleight of Hand is headed to the hand. Remember, Vivi has not been activated just yet this turn.
Yeah, I would expect that we are going to see Vivi activated, of course, now, before combat happens. We'll be able to fire off, one of these draw spells, either the Sleight of Hand or the Opt, and then still fire off the removal spell as well, putting William down to just 1 creature. Probably, again, the Manifold Mouse. But there is a chance that if Toni thinks the Double Strike is the issue, the scarier part, the only way he loses this game, he leaves the Emberheart Challenger without a way to trigger the Valiant easily in the Manifold Mouse, saying you're stuck on lands, you can try to mess around with this.
And for Toni, you do have to think about what happens if my opponent does draw a 3rd land and what is going on over there. You know, of course, Screaming Nemesis is in the main deck of these sort of strategies, so it could be a handful of those. It could be a handful of 1-drops like we do see here in Heartfire Hero, Burst Lightning, Hired Claw, and Monstrous Rage. So a lot to think about here for Toni. One, because there's a lot going on the other side of the battlefield, but also, you're playing for top 8 of a Pro Tour, and you don't want to mess this up. So, Sleight of Hand is where things are going to begin. Vivi's going to trigger once again, and as will Monastery Swiftspear's Prowess. And now, the blue can tripper shows you a Wild Ride and an Opt.
I think I want the Wild Ride here if I'm in Toni's seat. Just a way to ensure that you're closing out the game the next turn. basically regardless of what happens. It is a little awkward to only have one draw spell left, but this is a position where you're going to need much more than the tools that you already have on the board. So I think the Wild Ride seems like the answer. Of course, here Toni has to do the math of whether this Wild Ride just ends the game right here and now. Through a blocker, I don't believe it does. You don't have the option of casting both the Wild Ride and the Torch to the Tower, as you have already activated VV and played land for the turn.
And Toni is thinking it through, and the selection has been almost made. Thinking about making it, and now the selection has been made. So, sleight of hand is done resolving, and that card will go to the bottom. And one of these sleight of hands will go into the graveyard here in just a moment. There is the Torch the Tower. VV gets a little bit larger.
13.
Yeah, and now an attack for 9 can come through, putting William down to 4 if Toni chooses. It would be interesting if Toni was going to play this defensively, but I don't think you're worried about dying from 13 when your opponent has 2 lands and just an Emberheart Challenger in play.
Well, we'll see how that goes.
Stranger things have happened.
Let's see if a land is here.
It's a Witchstalker Frenzy. That's probably one of the worst draws in this position, which means that more likely than not, William has to start this turn off by just firing off that Monstrous Rage.
And you can tell that William is not thrilled about how this game has gone, and with good reason. It was a very good start for our mono red player. Don't need a lot of lands to operate with this deck, but 3 is kind of the sweet spot where you can, of course, play your 3-mana spells like Screaming Nemesis, but also a lot of 1-mana spells in one turn. So this will be a Monstrous Rage that is going to target the Emberheart Challenger. And the top card now is another copy of Monstrous Rage.
Yeah, and that's not enough. I think William needed more help than this, and just short on lands.
Here comes the attack. And that damage is going to come on through. And now maybe the plan is perhaps a blocker. Yep, it's just going to be a Hardfire Hero and hope for the best, but I think we all know the best is not coming here, unfortunately, for William. Maybe a mistake will be made, but you know, at this stage of things, there's no reason to concede the game. It's to play it out, and play it out indeed. So Toni is 1-1-1 game away from top 8 here. Looks like at Pro Tour Las Vegas, Pro Tour Final Fantasy.
And look, William, he has to be getting some flashbacks of being in this exact position 5 months ago, 4 months ago. And, you know, you just have to shake it off. Once again, no Magebane Lizard in the hand. That is the first big issue. He has not found a single copy of this card in between the 2 games that he's played so far. And more often than not, it really does come down to whether you just find that or not.
Yeah, these have been some pretty difficult draws, and now just a passing the turn. 2 copies of Screaming Nemesis here for William, alongside 2 copies of Monstrous Rage and that Twin Maw Stormbrood. And now the Quarry Steel Cutters are here, folks. We haven't seen a lot of draws like this over the course of the weekend, which is Steel Cutter on 2, Steel Cutter on 3, and an additional spell to really get this busted equipment going.
Yeah, I think William is more or less on draw a card. If it's a land, play a Screaming Nemesis and hope. Otherwise, I think it might just be a concession and we might be all done just like that. There's no real way for Mono Red to come back from this sort of position if you've already fallen behind like this and stumbled on lands.
Yeah, these red strategies, it's going to require a land right now, and I don't think that was one.
Soccer Frenzy again?
Yeah, that's going to just be that removal spell, that dragon that does shuffle back into the deck here, and that will get shuffled back in here momentarily. But you can see William is a little bit frustrated, not thinking things through briefly, because I would be frustrated too, right? Playing for the top 8 here, and your deck is not cooperating as much as you would like.
Yeah, it's definitely, this is, you know, there's no good time for this to happen
Never
in the game
is.
of Magic,
Yep.
but I think you can definitively say this is the worst time
I think I
for
agree
it
with
to
that.
happen. And for William, who has literally been here before, it's tough that this is happening again.
And given that he's been here before, and this is an additional time of that, I have every reason to believe that he will likely be here again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think players that are showing this level of consistency at this level of play, it is not easy to be in this position here. It's not easy to be 11-3-1 playing for top 8 of a Pro Tour. It is darn near impossible to be doing it 2 times in a row. The number of people that we've seen that do that, incredibly small.
So there's that third land finally, and here comes Screaming Nemesis. And I think it might just try to play a little bit of defense because attacking and may be ill-advised. But this is kind of a rock and a hard place here, partner, because I'm not sure either decision is a good one.
Yeah, I think you have to just get aggressive because of the nature of the game. But unfortunately, in both ways, William has a good read that there's an almost 100% chance that Toni's hand contains one of those into the Flood Maws, or at least a way to deal with this Screaming Nemesis. If it's going to be a removal spell, he can just deal with the creature, deal some damage to it. If it's going to be into the Flood Maw, well, he's losing it anyway, so he might as well push that damage through. But again, he knows that 98% of the time, he's dead here. It's just a matter of how is Toni going to kill him, and 3 Quarry Steelcutters seems about right.
That might be the way to get the job done.
Yeah,
and that is going to do it. Toni Portolan is going to win this game and match 2-0. Top 8 on the horizon. It looks to be the case. As another copy of Is It Prowess is headed to the elimination rounds onto the Sunday stage. Congratulations to Toni.
Yeah, of course, nothing is a guarantee here. We are in the last round. There are a lot of players that are going to be at the same record.
It is quite likely that
Exactly.
Toni is in. That's what we believe to be true.
And I do want to give props to William one more time. I think that was a really rough spot to be in. I think he's played fantastically for 2 events in a row, and we're definitely going to be seeing more of him. And that was a lot of sportsmanship to stay stoic in the face of that. But again, Toni Portolan, really just navigating his build a little more aggressive with the Monastery Source Spears.
Yeah, there's a little
to a top
celebration.
8
There we
position.
go. There we go. There's a good hug. Again, we'll see how the tiebreakers do shake out, but I think Toni is one of those players who's pretty confident that if I just get that match win, I'm going to be onto the Sunday stage. But we will find out soon enough. All in all, congratulations to Toni on a fantastic tournament. Going 12-4 in a Pro Tour, that's pretty tough to do.
Oh, absolutely. Massive congratulations to him. Of course, a name that we've seen play in the World Magic Cup before, representing Croatia many years ago. And to see him still competing at this top level, very impressive to see. And again, into the top 8, most likely.
Probably. Yep.
And that means another copy of Prowess into the top 8. I believe currently we have 1 Prowess and 3 mono red.
Something like that.
Yeah.
There's a couple. You know what? There's mountains. There's red spells. So I hope you do like those. Hope you like more Magic too, because we got more. We got more coming to you after a short little break. We got to figure out who the rest of the top 8 players are going to be. Christian Baker, Theodore Jung. We'll find out in just a moment. See you soon. The sun is going down. You know what that means? It's not going to be that warm outside when we're done.
That doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
Cedric Phillips, Monty DeVuti. We are in beautiful Las Vegas at MagicCon Las Vegas. You might be able to see on that little Magic card right there that MagicCon is coming to Atlanta in September, but we still have to finish out what's going on here. Hello, Talieves, as I believe that might be, what do you think, Elspeth there? Maybe that's my best guess.
Sure, looks like Elspeth to me.
That's just my best guess. I'm not perfect with these things. What I can tell you is that we have a lot of red-based strategies into the top 8 of this tournament. A lot of Izzet prowess, a lot of mono-red aggro, and if you're a fan of the Izzet prowess strategy, guess what? We got more of that coming.
Yeah, we are going to watch a mirror match.
Yes, we are.
And we think the winner has a good chance of making his way into the top 8 as well.
Yeah, we don't call it a lock because tiebreakers can be a little bit finicky, but chances are that if Christian Baker, who was our 8-0 after day number 1 on top of the standings, or Theodore Jung, whoever wins this match is likely into our elimination rounds, likely headed to the Sunday stage. And as Monty did mention, it is an Izzet prowess mirror. Now, if you did join us a little bit earlier in the weekend, Christian Baker had a very innovative build of Izzet prowess because the sideboard kind of transitions into a kind of funky flash style game, and perhaps we will get to that at some point over the course of these games. For now, we turn our attention to game number 1 between these two, and it'll be a Storm Chaser's talent to get this party started.
Yeah, when the two of us had the opportunity to watch Christian, he was playing against Omniscience, I believe. It wasn't quite the matchup here of being able to play in the prowess mirror, so I'm very curious how he's going to be sideboarding for the mirror match because we haven't had a chance to see that yet.
Sleight of hand is going to yield a couple of ops. Want to go ahead and head into Theodore's hand, and we are going to head back over to Christian Baker.
Yeah, I think in this prowess mirror, for game 1, one of the things that Theo's build has done, alongside some of the other members of Team Channel Fireball, is go very aggressive. They have 4 copies of Monastery Source Spear, as well as 3 copies of Drakehatcher. Only 1 copy of Vivi in the main deck, so really going closer to the ground here with it.
There's another sleight of hand, and now here's the Verge. And is there a follow-up to be had right now? You see a copy of Into the Flood Maw, and just going to pass the turn back, Will Jung. We're going to head back over to Baker now, who again was our 8-0 after day number 1 of competition. When you're sitting at 8-0 after day 1 of a Pro Tour, you got to be feeling pretty good. But also that second day, well, things get harder because you start playing against the other players that are doing really well. And so you see a 3-4 start here for Christian Baker. But with a win here, it would probably be that Sunday stage and thinking to yourself, whew, I'm glad I didn't blow that 8-0. But again, the tournament gets harder the further that you go.
Yeah, one of those things is he's really pushing the limits of starting with an 8-0 start and what you still need to do to make top 8. So hasn't had the smoothest day 2, but could negate all of that by just winning 1 match of Magic.
Just takes 1 match win to not have to think about that anymore. That end of the Flood Maw took care of that prowess token. So that very powerful unsummon effect that we've seen all weekend long from this prowess strategy. Going to take care of that Otter. But there is still a Quarry Steel Cutter and a Monk attached to it.
I believe Theo does have a Drakehatcher, so can just deploy that here. Does have a copy of Torch the Tower that I saw in hand as well. I believe the rest of the cards are Monstrous Rage and Opt, a copy of Stock Up, and maybe 1 card that I'm not seeing. No, just the 4.
Yep.
So Theo's hand, okay. Would have liked to have one of these threats down already, if possible, but definitely not too late yet. We haven't seen one of the cards that snowballs the game out of control, like Vivi hit the board from Christian.
Yeah. And Vivi is in Christian Baker's hand right now, and so the question, of course, is this a good time to deploy it? It looks like the answer is no thus far, as there's a copy of Storm Chaser's talent. The follow-up is going to be Into the Flood Maw on the Drake Hatcher, which means there's going to be a Quarry Steel Cutter trigger.
There's also a prowess trigger on the stack, so that's something that Theo has to be thinking about as well with that Torch the Tower in hand, is are you going to try to respond to a prowess trigger of some kind here before it resolves?
It looks like there's going to be no blocks and no instant speed effects here from Jung. So Theo's going to fall down to 11. Let's see what this is going to be on the end stab. Looks like it might be an Opt.
I think Theo is in a position where he needs to start removing these creatures. He can't really go for Opt and then feel forced to use the Torch of the Tower next turn anyways. He has to put himself in a position where he's getting this board somewhat under control, considering he's incredibly far behind.
Yeah, well, that's a fair point. Now, of course, we do know that this blue-red deck doesn't play defense all that well, because once you're ahead, you're able to really start pushing your advantage, and that's what you're seeing Christian Baker do thus far through this game.
Yeah,
Jung is trying to catch back up, but it's really hard to do.
Yeah, maybe the worst pick possible for him in this exact spot. He picked up another copy of Stock Up. If he had the time to deploy one, it would be excellent.
Yeah.
He would be up on resources. But the fact that he's stuck on 3 lands and he is just playing every turn in an attempt to survive means that doesn't really have the luxury of firing off one of these stock-ups.
Now, this is maybe a little bit of an interesting decision here from Christian Baker, who does have multiple copies of Vivi in hand, electing to go to level 2 on the Storm Chaser's talent to get back This Town Ain't Big Enough. So we have seen plenty of that combo over the past calendar year of This Town Ain't Big Enough alongside Chapter 2 of Storm Chaser's talent. By including a couple copies of the powerful uncommon, it does allow you to kind of build in this little bit of a weird loop that is hard for some decks to beat.
Yeah, and I think the reason he did that is, if I saw his hand correctly, it was 2 Vivis and lands, so he wasn't able to double spell in any way to trigger the Corey Steelcutter, and he wasn't really able to make use of Vivi in any way. And this gave Theo a big window now to get an attack in with this Drakehatcher, and we've seen this monstrous rage on Drakehatcher break points so many times already in this tournament. 6 is the magic number for incubation counters, because with it, you're able to create 2 Drake tokens immediately, and that means Theo now has a board. We've said so many times the way to beat Izzet Prowess is to go wide. That's what the green decks are trying to do.
Yep.
Well, that's also what this Drakehatcher does.
So this game has taken a major turn. If you think back, I don't know, roughly 5 minutes ago, was Corey Steelcutter this, Corey Steelcutter that. Bunch of Monk tokens on the battlefield. Storm Chaser's talent had been played a second time, and all of a sudden this game is starting to get pretty difficult here for Christian Baker, and not having the opportunity to really get Vivi deployed in any meaningful way, and that still appears to be the case right now.
Yeah, I do think a copy of Abrade was drawn here from Christian, so could take the opportunity to go Vivi into Abrade, deal with the Drakehatcher, say, okay, you make some Drakes, that's fine. I'll have to deal with the board, but at least the Drakehatcher would be off and you would have Vivi down. You would also be triggering Corey Steelcutter in that position, may be able to still push some damage through.
It looks like it's going to go towards This Town Ain't Big Enough, because do remember that the 5th land that entered the battlefield for Christian Baker was a Spirebluff Canal that enters the battlefield tapped. So it doesn't have access to 5 mana on this particular turn, has access to 4. It's going to be 5 mana next turn, most likely, at least on the minimum. And now the question is, do we go with that Abrade that you had mentioned? And the Abrade is going to get cast on the Drake. So Corey Steelcutter will yield another Monk, and now into the red zone comes Christian Baker.
Yeah, I definitely thought Christian had tapped a land for mana there when he was thinking about that. So doesn't have access to the Vivi line or anything good to do with Vivi, considering he could only play it and only have 1 mana available. So is forced to go for this line, but now Theo does get to untap with resources again.
It'll be Stock Up, 1 prowess trigger there on the Monastery Swiftspear that's on the battlefield. So currently a 2/3. Well, let's pay attention to what the Stock Up is going to yield here for Jung. There's a couple of lands in there. I can't imagine terribly interested in those, but we will find out soon enough. As Theo's going to put those 3 cards to the bottom, found the 2 cards that he is happy with, and now there's a Swiftspear, and they're going to continue to play a little bit of defense. So we're going to head back over to Baker, who again has those multiple copies of Eevee in hand, and now might be the time to finally get them onto the battlefield. At least one of them.
Yeah, the awkward part is he used both of his spells that previous turn, did pick up that Storm Chaser's talent, so does have that, but doesn't have any more interaction as we knew the last turn. So it does look like he picked up another copy of This Town Ain't Big Enough this turn.
Yep.
And that could be huge.
Yeah, This Town Ain't Big Enough actually lines up pretty nicely here. You play a VV, then you cast a Storm Chaser's talent. That, of course, will put a counter onto the VV, so we'll see that. Also, this is going to trigger Corey Steelcutter here in just a moment. So Theodore is going to fall down to 6. Steelcutter is going to come in, as will that Otter token. Remember that VV has not been activated just yet this turn. Here come the Knuckleheads. So there's a pretty clean attack.
One has one prowess trigger, the other has none.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a 2.
These are both 2-2s.
And they're both 2-2s at this stage of things.
And the one with the Quarry Steel Cutter on it. Oh, no blocks. That is lethal.
And this town is not close to big enough for you, Theodore Jung. That means Christian Baker is up 1 here in the Is It Prowess Mirror. Vivi got to that party a little late, but was still very, very impactful. So, Christian Baker with that 8-0 start. A bumpy day number 2 is 1 win away from not having to ever think about that again. And into potentially the top 8 here at Pro Tour. Final Fantasy. But I think I said, I saw what you did too. I saw 2 cards headed to the bottom. So an untimely double mulligan for Baker.
Yeah, there we go. It looks like a mulligan to 6 for Theo, but definitely looked like a 5 for Baker. He put 2 back there.
Yeah, and it looks like a pretty good start here for Theo with the Monastery Swift Spear into a Quarry Steel Cutter. So you have to imagine the next turn is probably going to be a pretty good one.
Yeah, okay, looking at Theo's hand, I see 2 copies of Sleight of Hand and a Torch to the Tower. So definitely able to at least trigger the Quarry Steel Cutter and set up further with the Sleight of Hands.
Well, there'll be Steel Cutters on this battlefield, 1 for each player. But Theo is on the play, and we're about to see quite a few triggers here, folks. So we're going to start off with a Sleight of Hand. Theo's going to fall down to 17 to play the Blue Sorcery, and the Swift Spear is going to be a 2-3 at the moment, waiting for that Steel Cutter to generate a token, I imagine. There's the second Sleight of Hand. So Swift Spear's now 3-4, and there's the first Monk from the Steel Cutter. A couple of islands there for Theo are the options. So 1 in hand, 1 headed to the bottom. And then do remember there's a Torch to the Tower over there. And Theo's going to take another 1. And there's also a copy of Storm Chaser's Talent. So that'll yield a 1-1 Otter. And now that Swift Spear is going to turn to a 4-5. We got a Prowess token, that's 3. So it looks like it should be 7 all day. And that's going to bring Baker down to 9.
Yeah, that's a pretty big turn from Theo. It was turn 3, and now the onus is on Christian to answer. Likely going to start off with a draw spell of his own, and really looking for 1 mana interaction here. Does have a copy of Into the Floodmaw in hand, so at least has a way to answer one of these creatures on the battlefield. But one of the big issues that we have seen is, again, the ability to go wide from the Is It Prowess deck in the mirror match.
You see a Torch to the Tower there is going to take care of the Monastery Swift Spear. Make sure those life totals are correct now, too. It looks like 16 to 10. And it looks like Torch to the Tower is going to take care of that Monk token. I'm going to bargain, sacrificing the Storm Chaser's Talent. And now Storm Chaser's Talent is going to come down. That's going to trigger the Quarry Steel Cutter. And now here comes the Otter once again.
These are 3s?
Yep.
These are 3s. Okay, and the Football is going to take care of one of those.
Yeah, this is the problem with mulligans to 5, and
Oh, this is the problem.
oh, my bad. No, it's obvious, Cedric.
Here's a stock up. Ooh, Fire Magic. I like that Fire Magic is available here for game number 3.
Okay, hold on now. All right, so Fire Magic Mountain. That was more or less what Christian needed in this spot, and I don't think Theo has anything like a spell
Actually, this
here.
could, yeah, that's actually a really good call. This could be sick.
This could be good. Now hold on.
Yep. Bang.
Now, I will say that Monk is surviving.
Yes.
So we haven't cleared off the board by any.
But also, Baker has a Monk of his own.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of an interesting question if you're supposed to attack with this Monk.
I
mean, the chance of you being able to block effectively strike me as extremely low.
It's true, but it is a matter of, can you block to survive lethal?
Sure.
Right? If you can block and make sure that Theo is only pushing 2 damage through, that is a chance to untap when you have cards in hand.
Oh me, oh my. Okay, Storm Chaser Talent level 2. All right. Getting back. Sleight of Hand. Okay. Okay. 1, 2. That was an Into the Floodmaw, so that's the new card in hand. That's an attack for 3 because of Prowess triggers. Do you chump? Nope, gonna go down to 2. Okay, this is interesting now.
Yeah, I do believe there's a copy of this town big enough, as well as a braid in the hand to start things off. So in theory, Christian is able to braid the Quarry Steel Cutter. Get that out of the way. Problem 1 done. Use this town big enough, bounce your Steel Cutter and the Monk. While that's happening, you get your token anyways.
Yep.
So you have a blocker and you're pushing some damage through. The board is clear and Theo has 1 card in hand.
Oh, Christian Baker. Christian Baker is building a little bit of momentum right now.
That's 2 into the Flood Mods.
That fire magic was really
that
good.
was really good. 2 into the Flood Mods. All those will do is keep the board in control, but they won't push Theo any further ahead.
Sleight of hand. There's a this town ain't big. Oh, excuse me. There's a Storm Chaser's talent in there.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be the pickup here.
Okay.
Not sure what the other card was.
This is about to be one heck of a comeback. There's a Storm Chaser's talent. Otter. Prowess triggers. Is it time to... do you Flood Maw now?
I think you have to.
Sleight of hand challenge. So there's 3 triggers here, 1 trigger here. 3 prowess triggers.
Yeah, this is an attack coming through for, I believe, 8.
Boy, these games are swingy.
11? This is an attack for 11?
Yeah, these games are swingy. Out of nowhere, a fire magic from the sideboard. I mean, perfect stock
Untapped
up.
red source fire magic.
Perfect stock up.
You cannot ask for better if you are Christian Baker. This was a mulligan to 5 game.
All right, into the Flood Maw. I think you got to cast at least one of them. Maybe not both, but certainly one. Okay.
Take 7.
You wonder
Take
where
7
this game
down to
went all
6.
wrong.
Oh, you're at 6. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, what can Theo draw? Is it a stock up that needs to be found here?
Oh man, and the land.
Oh, that's not great.
I think it's over.
I passed the turn back, and I had Baker's way. Baker came into the day 8-0. These Pro Tour things, they're tough.
Yeah. And I believe Christian can start with Storm Chaser's talent, level 2. Can get back this time big enough, but I think you just go for Sleight of Hand and try to get a second spell going. Doesn't have the second spell.
So here's just the attack.
So I believe this is only 4 damage. Another spell would have been lethal. This is not.
Okay. I don't know.
I don't know what Theo needs, but that's not it.
It's not a stock up. It's not a land. The land's not useful, and that is going to do it. Christian Baker from 8-0 to 11-4 to that magic number of 12. That's the number of wins that he has, and if his tiebreakers are kind, it'll be another Is It Prowess deck into the top 8. What an up and down day it has to have been, for him.
Yeah, I think definitely when you go into Pod 1, you feel good. You are our overnight leader. You have had a wonderful day, but one of the things is you have to make sure not to get ahead of yourself. You have to make sure that your eyes are on the matches of Magic that have to be played. You have to draft another good deck. We saw him draft green-red. Not ideal. So to bring it back from that spot to here and be likely into our top 8, not a guaranteed.
Yeah.
That is a way to salvage the day, and definitely right now in Christian Baker's seat, you're breathing a sigh of relief. You are saying, okay, I didn't throw it away, probably.
Yep.
I've made the most of my 8-0. Now, hopefully, I can come back tomorrow and just have a fresh slate.
Tiebreakers will, of course, tell us more about that story with Christian Baker. But guess what? More Magic. Arch Dota is where we are headed to next. Going to get our eyes on this matchup. Azorius Omniscience against Andy Garcia-Romo, who's playing Mono Red Aggro. We knew that Azorius Omniscience coming into the weekend was going to be a pretty popular one. About 20% of the metagame. It's just done okay here this weekend. Mono Red, though, is performing very, very well, and Andy Garcia-Romo is the one piloting it in this match. We're going to join this one in progress. Game number 3 is where we're headed. Yeah, pretty clear whoever wins this one will be up to that magic number of 12. And we'll see how their tiebreakers do shake out as well. So the big question here, of course, is who's on the play?
Yeah, if we take all of the results that we have so far and assume everybody is in the top 8, we have 4 prowess and 3 red in the top 8. So Arch, they're playing to be the only person not playing red in the top 8. And
the proverbial hero, as it were.
And it's going to take a heroic run because they are on a mulligan to 5 here in this game 3. Yes, they have the play against Mono Red, and they have, I would say, the most important card in the hand in the temporary lockdown.
Okay.
But how much more do they have? Because a mulligan to 5 is just so rough here.
Well, Hired Claw is how Andy Garcia-Romo is going to get things started. And now it'll be another copy of Hired Claw.
Yeah, last time we saw Ken Yukihiro playing this matchup, His turn 2 was Hired Claw, attack, put a counter on it. I'm not putting anything else into that lockdown. Andy's taking a similar route, playing a second Hired Claw, and just getting 2 damage in that way.
Well, those are going straight to jail, so we're not going to see those anymore. A temporary lockdown that appears to be quite permanent will take care of the 1-drops. But Screaming Nemesis, I think that one might be here to stay for a little while. Doesn't get hit by the powerful white enchantment.
Yeah, this is the relief here, hoping able to get some work done before Arch is able to set up anything, as they are still in quite a lot of trouble. I believe they do have a copy of Scroll Shift in hand. Typically a way to protect your Omniscience, maybe get some value from temporary lockdown, and could use it to exile the Emberheart Challenger in this position. But otherwise, is still in quite a lot of trouble, though I do see a copy of Ifar's Dispersal picked up from Arch as well.
Well, here is the Dispersal, so gonna attempt to bounce the Screaming Nemesis. That's gonna work. Take a look at a couple of cards here.
All right, that's
Will
Meringue
Arch?
River Regent as one of the cards. Didn't get a great look at the other one, but one of the cool things that this copy of Dispersal allows Arch to do is essentially tell Andy, yeah, I'm going to take 2. And then the impetus is on Andy to maybe go for this, and the Scroll Shift here is going to be absolutely huge.
There's the trigger. Heartfire Heroes, the reveal. And there's the aforementioned Scroll Shift on the lockdown. That is absolutely brutal. So on a mulligan to 5, Arch is absolutely fighting back, but simply going to pass the turn back over to Andy Garcia-Romo. There is a land.
I
for
believe
Andy.
Arch has Omniscience in hand, and I also believe Arch has Meringue River Region. So has the ability to go for Coil and Catch on the end step and discard that Omniscience, pick up some new cards, not under any pressure, and I don't see a Soul Guide Lantern. That was the way that we saw Ken really close out this match, was consistently having the artifact available to him. And he doesn't have Soul Guide Lantern right now. So Arch Dota thinking, if I get an Abuelo's Awakening off of this Coil and Catch, we might be cooking.
Well, looks like the hand here for Garcia is a copy of Manifold Mouse and Screaming Nemesis. There's a third card over there.
Witch Stalker Frenzy.
Okay, Witch Stalker Frenzy is the other one. So it could be Manifold Mouse with the Offspring. Yep, okay. So there's that. I'm just going to pass the turn back. So it looks like it might be time for a little Coil and Catch. Yes, it is. So a 1 and a 2.
Oh,
and
has
a 3.
the Abuelo's Awakening. Oh my goodness.
Boy, this game just took a turn. All right, that's going to get shuffled back in there. Okay. All right. I've been waiting to watch the game where Omniscience is on the battlefield, but the game doesn't end right away. So perhaps we're going to run ourselves into that one.
Yeah, notably, you don't want to bring the Omniscience back here unless you're able to do a lot more with it, because Abuelo's Awakening is making it a creature, and that means if Andy Garcia-Romo has a removal spell, like that Witch Stalker Frenzy that we see he has in hand, then if Arch isn't actually able to get some value out of this Omniscience, they're just going to lose it and be in a much worse position than they were before.
Absolutely agree. So, looks like the hand here for Arch.
I see 3 lands and a Get Lost.
That's what I see as well, alongside that Awakening. So
yeah, and if that's the case, I think you're being forced to pass here. 4 lands?
Yep, there's a Seachrome Coast, and Arch will simply pass the turn back over to Andy Garcia-Romo, who, again, Screaming Nemesis in hand, a Witch Stalker Frenzy in hand, a couple of mice on the battlefield.
Yeah, looks like picked up a Rockface Village, so now has choices, and he could turn the Soulstone Sanctuary into a creature, go that way, or could just deploy the Screaming Nemesis and say that I'm going all the way wide and just trying to end this game as soon as possible here. Soulstone Sanctuary is a weaker line to another copy of Ifar's Dispersal, for example.
And this is when you're playing against this Omniscience deck, they have weird interaction that's like temporary, right? Dispersal is a great example of this. What makes this kind of a unique situation is, okay, well, Arch has just drawn a handful of cards and it's just discarded Omniscience. Also, Arch is on a mulligan to 5. So how much of this stuff am I going to play around, and how I'm going to play around it, right? When your opponent's starting hand size has been so small. And so now there's a copy of Get Lost. Okay. A couple of map tokens on the way here for Andy.
I believe this should be 3 damage coming across. Because one of the Manifold Mice, of course, gave double strike to the Sanctuary. The other gave double strike to a Manifold Mouse.
Is this maybe another lockdown? Yep.
Okay.
That's going to take care of those. Okay.
So Screaming Nemesis, Witchstalker Frenzy. The map tokens are gone. You haven't given Andy any extra value.
Here's the Nemesis in for 3. Arch going to fall down to 8. Big draw. Is that a River Regent?
I think Andy has a lethal if he's able to untap from this position. That's step 1. The question is, what can Arch do? I think Andy also drew a copy of Burst Lightning.
Oh, interesting.
So
okay.
now Andy is representing an answer to Abuelo's Awakening if it is cast for just 4 mana. But I think if that is Meringue River Region, one thing Arch can do here is do this for 6.
Yeah, I kind of dig this.
Get 2 more +1/+1 counters. Now this is a 3/3 Omniscience. And that's a scary number because you can go Coil and Catch, and assuming you don't brick here.
1, 2, 3.
I see land Awakening +1 blue card in hand. That's a Roiling Dragon Storm, which I think Arch really needs it to be a Roiling Dragon Storm or another copy of Meringue River. It's an Omniscience?
It's an Omniscience, and I think an Abuelo's Awakening.
Oh, no.
Oh no is the appropriate thing to say right now. Oh, no.
I think we may be done.
Well, let's find out. Or instead thinking, trying to figure out exactly what to discard to this Coil and Catch. Remember, the Meringue River region is going to shuffle back into the deck.
Yeah,
so there's a discard of a Plains. And now here comes the shuffle.
Yeah, Omens are not adventures. They are not giving you both sides. There's a notable cost to playing Coil and Catch here rather than just putting a Meringue River region on the battlefield. Arch could have done that and just bounced the Screaming Nemesis and said, okay, I have a dragon, your turn. But Screaming Nemesis is a big issue. It's not something you can just block profitably. So if Andy was to play it again and attack, Arch would still be in trouble. So they made the logical choice of going for their win condition and trying to find their way out of this. But now they're in a position where Andy is theoretically able to just end the game here. Arch will need to block the Screaming Nemesis with the 3/3 Omniscience.
Yep. So if you're Andy also, the thing you have to think about in this situation, my opponent can play any card.
Yep.
And how am I going to play around them?
Yep.
Because Burst Lightning in hand, yes.
Yep.
Witchstalker Frenzy in hand, yes. What am I going to play around, and how do I play around it when my opponent, yes, tapped out, but Omniscience is plural or on the battlefield, so they can play anything at any time?
I think in Andy's position, you have to just attack with the Screaming Nemesis. I think that is where step 1 begins. I think you have to attack with the Screaming Nemesis and see if Arch makes the block that they should be making with their Omniscience. Because if Arch doesn't block somehow, you win.
You just Witchstalker Frenzy your own Screaming Nemesis and deal with 5.
you do Witchstalker Frenzy on your own Screaming Nemesis. So step 1 for Arch here, knowing that they have nothing in hand. Andy, of course, does not know this, but knowing they have nothing in hand is you need to block here.
There's your block. Okay. Okay, Arch down to 5, but still with Omniscience on the battlefield, which means the draw steps that they have available are really good. Oh, baby, here we go.
Arch is also unable to gain life. There's a Burst Lightning that could be kicked for 4.
Oh,
hold on.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Moment of truth.
1, 2, 3.
As far as dispersal,
Is that anything?
Is
that return your Archaeologist? Can we do that?
You could. It's A little risky, but I think you get to surveil too, I believe, first.
Okay.
So this is a point where Andy may have to just kill the archaeologist.
Sure. There's the frenzy. Oh, I see. So this is frenzy to attempt to kill that.
Yep. Burst lightning.
End step burst puts you to 3. Untap, activate
Soulstone
creature
Sanctuary,
land.
and hope you have stone.
Hope you have nothing. Ugh.
Now, I believe this is ridiculous to say. I believe Arch has another Whale's Awakening that they could cast to make an omniscience blocker.
Oh,
gonna 4/4 omniscience as a
Let's
blocker.
get dirty. Yes. Okay, go ahead.
All right, that's draw for Andy here. I believe would be another copy of Screaming Nemesis.
Okay,
that would
sure,
close out
sure.
the game guaranteed.
Sure.
And I believe Arch is hellbent right now.
Yep.
So Andy has full information. There are no cards from Arch, and that means if Andy can find a Nemesis, that would do it. That's an Emberheart Challenger. That would not.
That does not do it.
No, that would not do it. Andy could burst lightning his own Emberheart Challenger. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I don't
but
think there's anything there.
yeah, that would be a little too risky. So I think this may have to be a pass from Andy, and hope Arch draws nothing in this one draw step, allowing you to turn the Screaming Nemesis, the Soulstone Sanctuary, into a creature, and then try to do something with your Emberheart Challenger, Rockface Village, and Soulstone Sanctuary.
Sure. So Andy's plan may be to fade for
One
turn.
draw step.
Yeah.
Because you can go 4 mana, make the Sanctuary a creature, burst lightning you. That's 3.
Yep.
Right? Play the Emberheart Challenger, Rockface Village it,
Yep.
and that's lethal with 2 creatures, assuming Arch has nothing.
Looks like Andy's plan is going to be Emberheart Challenger, Rockface Villages, Valiant Trigger, take a look ski. This is. Ooh. How big is this thing now? Oh, there's a block.
It's 3 currently.
That's 6. 3. So 3.
I believe Arch is
7.
going to 1.
7 minus 4.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Arch is going to 2. That is 3 counters on the Omniscience.
So I take 3 and then
Yep. Take 3.
Should I go to 2?
Go down to 2. Okay, burst lightning in hand.
Yep.
So fade.
Can't gain life.
So
You just need
fade.
to not die.
Top.
And you need to not die, but also Arch needs to not draw their whole deck because there are counter spells in this deck,
Yeah.
in theory.
I didn't get a good look at the card.
I didn't get a good look at the card either, but is that River Regent?
Draw. Land. This frees up the activate the creature.
Yeah.
Battle. That's
It's
it.
not River
Fade
Regent.
is the draw. Andy Garcia-Romo with mono red is going to win this match here over Arch Dota playing Azorius Omniscience. And perhaps we have another mono red deck into our elimination rounds on Sunday.
We may be looking at the 4-4 split, Cedric. All red, all the time. 4 prowess, 4 mono red aggro. We'll see. Still some things to be decided.
It's true.
Still some tiebreakers. We've seen tiebreakers shift dramatically
We
in
have.
the last rounds.
We have. In
Nothing
tournaments-
is a given.
Yeah, in tournaments of this size, that's why we, of course, say in this final round that we're not entirely sure exactly what's going to happen. We think we have a pretty good idea of it, but it is up to the tiebreakers out there. Monty, to say the least, Red Dead Redemption, dude, mountains and red spells are everywhere.
Yeah, I think it is one of the things that we maybe expected to be the metagame for the weekend. But even so, with this big target on Is It Prowess with mono red aggro, a lot of people expecting it to be the most played, second most played deck in the room, excuse me. I don't think anybody expected potentially an entire top 8 of them when they were the targeted deck.
Yeah, you know, players, they brought Azorius Omniscience and tried their very hardest to figure out ways to beat Is It Prowess in mono red. We saw plenty of green-based strategies with a lot of fun things going on there with Insidious Roots and Diamond Weapons and a bunch of other fun things there. But at the end of the day, it's Quarry Steelcutter, it's Monstrous Rage, and it's Heartfire Hero that are really having an impact on the day.
It sure is. I think one of the things that we can definitely say is the games have been entertaining.
They
There
have.
been a lot of comebacks. There have been a lot of close ones, one of the things that Is It Prowess continues to do to impress me is just how much it can shift the tide of a game within the span of a turn or two. Just some smart sequencing, some smart plays, and it's all in your favor again.
Well, our feature matches are done. We got to figure out who's in the top 8 and going to be playing on the Sunday stage tomorrow. That's why we're going to head over to Maria and Corey, who are standing by. Take it away, my friends.
Hi, thank you so much, Cedric and Moni. Yes, everyone, we are waiting for our top 8 announcement here at Pro Tour Final Fantasy. And Corey's right, like this is where the rubber hits the road. This stuff is so exciting here.
Oh yeah, you see like all the testing teams in the corner. They're all like doing tiebreaker math for their friend. Everyone's huddled around a phone, trying to wait for things to refresh. It's tense out there, Maria.
Yes, and we have a crowd gathering as well to hear the top 8 announcement just across from us at the news desk here, which is very exciting. So as we wait for that to be ready, Corey, I've got to ask you, what for you, before our top 8 on Sunday, what's the story here for you of the weekend?
You know, I would say, of course, Is It Red Dex doing great. You know, I think that's pretty obvious. But I think the story for me is Final Fantasy Limited. It is so good. You're really seeing that preparation in that format is really, you know, equaling great results here as, you know, players didn't have that much time to actually get ready for this, what, a week and a half, 2 weeks or whatever. So the people that had a testing team and they prepared with Final Fantasy Draft, they're going to be the players we see in this announcement here real shortly.